the things they did, the nature of the constitutions that were drawn up was such as to favor the North. For example, the argument for dividing the East and the West, the South into two, East and West, the argument is ridiculous. The argument simply was this, that the South is heterogeneous, all right? And that Enugu, which was the capital, was too far away from Lagos. So communication was difficult between Enugu and Lagos. Now, the North, however, which is infinitely more heterogeneous than the South, was said to be homogeneous. Why? Because of the Hausaization, about which I spoke earlier on. Because of this false emirates that had been built up by the British. So they saw the North as a monolith. The East and West, they said they were too heterogeneous. Whereas if you were to try to count the number of ethnic groups in this South, they don't come to 1/3 of the number of ethnic groups in the North. Now, when they split that South in 1939 into Western region and Eastern region, as I said, they built up conflicting loyalties within the South. So that for most of our political life, even up to now, it is those loyalties that operate rather than Southern Nigeria. So you will find that whereas even when we split Nigeria into states, the idea of that was to break down these loyalties that have been built up. You will find how quickly northern governors began to meet. They began to meet from the 12-state structure. They began to meet because they wanted to project this concept that they are one. The southern governors, for many years, didn't think there was no problem. But there was a problem. The northern governors were trying to preserve that identity. The South was busy going apart because of our own fierce competitions for positions, civil service, parastatals, universities, what have you. We were the ones who were competing because degree versus degree, these were university people. These were folks who were looking for positions. Therefore, if you can use the Igbo connection, or the Yoruba connection, or the Edo connection, or Yafika, or Ijo, whatever you could use to get there, you get there. But the process, you threw up animosities between these people. They were busy to build up a homogeneity. So, the activities of the British prepared the way for this homogeneity in the North and the diversities in the South. And that remains a major feature. Today, for example, even though we now have 6 zones, political zones, you will find that over and above the zones, you then have this Northern Elders Forum, which was the first to emerge again. Before you had Japanese and Igbo. And the South are still fighting to find something that they can hold on to. Now, the consequence is that in a real effort to establish rulership, the South will claim its advantage because they have not yet been able to come together. If you think of what is happening now, all right? And let me tell you, the truth is that our northern brothers are very deft politicians. They plan way ahead. I happened to be around the 1967 ad hoc constitutional conference from the Midwest. You know that the North chose as their spokesman a man called Tarka. Okay? Tarka was the spokesman for the North. Now, he was a UMBC leader, all right, who wanted a Middle Belt state created. They made him spokesman. He did not say that he wanted a Middle Belt state created. In fact, that delegation that was next to ours, Midwest. And I can tell you this, Taka climbed over the wall of the divide between us and them into the Midwest delegation to plead with us, to please make sure that when we came forth with our own memorandum, we had state creation in it. Because his soldier boys who were the gates, manning the gates, told him that if they did not hear about Middle Belt State, they would kill him. He climbed over the wall at night to come and beg a Nahuru who led a delegation that we should include that in our own memorandum. But he didn't dare to say it officially from the north, but because they made him their spokesman, very clever. And they have this capacity, of planning such that at the end, they win. And I admire them for that master stroke, because Fort Taka was completely neutralized. But thank God we went on to say we wanted to have states created the next day, and so on. So that's the way they play the game. They plan way ahead. And we in the South are busy fighting over the two things here. Why they may be 50 years ahead of us in their planning. And they use these structures of the Fulani Jihad. They use them to create, this concept. And as I said, rabbiization, because it comes to culture, enables them to operate more easily as one group. There are divisions among them, there are differences among them, but those differences are subsumed by this picture of co-religionists, same culture, lingua franca, and so on. So when you hear folks from the Middle Belt speaking Hausa fluently, and they interact with everybody so well, the differences are as it were glossed over. And politically, now they find that there are differences now politically, because the folks from Plateau and Benue and so on are not going to accept some of the things that are accepted in earlier years, because they now are worried about their own interests and their own development within the new system. So this is how the thing is tied up from early beginnings, and the people just kept not being sufficiently aware that in fact a huge agenda was on and was being persistently followed. And anybody who attempted to stand in the way of that agenda will be dealt with either directly or indirectly. And the agenda continues. And we in the southern parts just don't seem to care until it hurts. It's when we have been seriously hurt somewhere that we suddenly realize, there's a problem here. And we then try to. But after a few years maybe, we forget again. And we carry on as if it's not. But the problem remains, and it's still a major feature of the Nigerian state system today.
Do we put it that due to the Christian teaching of tolerance and the Muslim teaching of intolerance, which have been displayed over the years, just like has been responsible for this type of behavior? That means the Christians cannot come together. They can't even see through what is happening. And
cannot even detect.
They can't even detect what that's the plan. That there's a plan for to push over or take over.
The 50-year ahead plan.
Like their plan ahead. Why Christians have this? Is it because of the own tolerance level that the Bible teaches, love your neighbor as you
love? Or we just blind,
or we just blind to the situation, or due to the divide in the body of Christ? That means
what exactly?
What exactly? Or is it because they see the South as Christians, whereas there are equally where the Christians are majority? So is it what is really...
And also paint it on the board of the army years, because it's pertinent to see whether that move continued even through the army years. And was the Christian South aware of anything during the army years? Has the same thing continued after the army years?
Yeah. Now, there's a basic difference between Christianity and Islam. And that difference is partly the consequence of where the two religions have come from to us. We received a faith which talks about state and religion as separate entities. The Muslim does not have that separation. For them, theocracy is the real thing. It is your religious standing that gives you authority to rule in Islam. However, in Christianity, we believe in a dichotomy between the state and religion. So I can be a Christian and be almost apolitical. Now that is not possible in Islam. And that's where we have suffered. Now, of course, this really, in a sense, is a false dichotomy that we have imbibed and preserved, because Christians ought to know that they can only thrive politically in an atmosphere that has the virtues that Christianity preaches. If there's no peace, for example, we cannot go on. All right. If there's no love, we cannot go on. And where we have failed as Christians in this nation is that we have not carried our Christian tenets into politics. If you say, I will not take bribe because my religion says I mustn't take bribe, now and you are a minister, all right, and you are saying no bribery in this ministry, it will make a difference. But if you join the crowd, okay, what we have done, and this is an area where Christians must take their own faults and accept it. What we have done is to forget completely 2 Corinthians 6, 17 and 18. Because it says, come away from among them and be separate. But we refuse to be separate. We refuse to be different. We join the crowd, and we join even the Muslim crowd to do those things which our faith does not allow us to do. So, because of that, we are unable to take the kind of stand that must be taken if change